All right, for more on this, we are joined by Judicial Crisis Network President Carrie Severino. Carrie, thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate your time.
Great to be here.
So where do you see the Supreme Court leaning based on what we've heard so far?
Yeah, I think the analysis we just heard is correct. I thought the first case with the OSHA regulations, it seems pretty clear to me the court was very concerned not about whether vaccines are good or whether this might be a policy some people might want to implement in certain types of work areas where you have people in close contact, but really who decides? Is this something that OSHA can decide? Is this under its guise of having a workplace regulation, not just any workplace regulation, but an emergency regulation where they skipped all the normal processes to do this because they said this is so immediate they have to do it? Or is this something that really Congress should be deciding because it's really a national policy? Or is it something which is traditional that the states would decide or that we would leave to individual businesses because they know their workforce best, they know the particular environment of their factories or their workplaces best, because some of these workplaces might not even have people in close contact. The second case, it's a little harder to tell. It's a closer case because there's a tighter nexus with the epidemic and healthcare workers, but there's also concerns there that the government might have gone farther than it has the authority to do, and this really should be a question dealt with by state authorities who traditionally would be the ones regulating how healthcare entities are functioning.
Do you think in some ways the Biden administration expects this to be shot down by the Supreme Court, and will they have gotten what they wanted in large part if that happens by laying out this roadmap for a broad system of vaccine or test mandates, and some businesses that wouldn't have otherwise implemented them already did?
I think that's unfortunately pretty accurate to how the Biden administration has worked up until now. We saw even with their eviction moratorium. Remember when President Biden said, hey, I know this is basically the Supreme Court's going to throw this out, but we're going to do it in a way we can get a few more weeks out of this thing. That's a disrespectful approach to the court, I think, and concerning. And in this mandate as well, we saw that Biden announced it and then waited several months to even implement this allegedly emergency mandate. But in the meantime, all these businesses who weren't legally required to do anything already were implementing it, and now we're going to see that if the Supreme Court does strike it down, it may have already forced the hand of businesses or medical establishments to do their thing. So this is where we have to, the court, it's important that they're moving quickly because we do want to make sure that the government isn't allowed to expand its authority just by alleging that it has authority when it knows that might be a tenuous legal argument.
On Justice Sotomayor, were you surprised at all to hear her referencing false information, and do those beliefs of hers, those inaccuracies, would they undermine confidence in this ruling if it's upheld?
Yeah, that was unfortunate to hear those things. And look, the justices are not medical experts or statisticians, so we shouldn't expect them to be. It is a concern, though, because you saw arguments coming from Justice Sotomayor and some of the other liberal justices that seemed to boil down to, well, this is just such an important emergency that we need to kind of fudge the law on this point, or we need to kind of use some discretionary power to go around what the normal limits would be. And that's a concern because it's when there are important issues like this and of such national importance that we need to make sure we are doing this according to the book. And so that misinformation, like Justice Sotomayor had, she thinks there's 100,000 kids in hospitals and on ventilators. That's not even true of the entire pandemic up until date. So her understanding of that may be formed by some of the media, et cetera, that doesn't have the numbers correct, is leading her to a wrong conclusion. Those policy conclusions should not be made by unelected judges, and they shouldn't be made by unelected bureaucrats either, because this is a big enough issue that this has to be dealt with by Congress or by our state legislators who can analyze, hopefully, the accurate facts, right, and then make conclusions based on what the people they represent, how they think this should be dealt with on a national and a state basis.
You'd think that that would weigh pretty heavily on decisions around healthcare workers, just given their proximity to this pandemic. How is that field different than other employments, other types of employment that we're dealing with here?
Yeah, so I think this is why that's going to be a closer question for the court. The OSHA mandate covers like anyone with 100 more employees. You could have people working entirely remotely that then are required to vaccinate. That doesn't make as much sense. In a healthcare setting, you can see where you are coming into contact with individuals, and maybe in a nursing home setting where they could be higher risk. That said, I think it's still, it goes down to not whether this is great policy, but also who decides, and then making sure that the flexibility is allowed for businesses. You know, they pointed out that in some of these smaller hospitals in rural areas, if you lose 3% of your workforce because they do not want to get vaccinated, or maybe they have medical or religious concerns about being vaccinated, that could be a huge blow. Maybe not to a big hospital system, but to these small areas, you could have a perverse effect of having less medical care available when we already have a nursing shortage in the country. So the plaintiffs in that case are arguing, let's make this more flexible so that states can deal with it according to their specific needs, that individual healthcare entities who all want all of the people to be safe and not to get COVID, of course, but they can assess their individual needs so they can provide the best healthcare possible. It shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all national solution, especially when there isn't statutory authority necessarily for that. It needs to be something that if Congress is going to decide it, they have to be the ones, not unelected bureaucrats.
Well, we are waiting to hear the view of the Supreme Court on this issue. A lot of people are interested in it. It will be impacted by it, so we will be watching and waiting. Carrie, Severino, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Griff?
Have a great day.